Here we go. I'm going to share my screen in a bit here, but I do want to say hello, shalom, and welcome. I like that. Hello, shalom, welcome, and thank you for tuning in into our online meet tonight. I wanted to quickly, talk about my name because I wanted to, my name in Hebrew is Suzanne. Oh no, my name is Suzanne, and in Hebrew it's Shushan or Shoshannah, which
Shoshannah.
Shoshannah. And so it's
Yeah.
very close to your name and my mom's name, actually. So I think we're all lilies here. So, the purpose really of our online meet is, once again, is to call for the lilies of the valley, the lilies of the field, and those among thorns to blossom with us. In the name of our Yahushua HaMashiach.
We are frozen again.
The rose of Sharon and lily of the valleys. Together we will draw, allure, and enamour souls that love and long after Yahuah our delight and his son Yahushua in the beauty of his instructions. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Our discussions is theocentric. In other words, focused, Yahuah focused, with an introspective approach through understanding the biology of our faith. I love that. And we do refer to scientific information, and just to help us to harmonize our spirit, soul, and body in accordance to Father's will, because we are commanded to love Yahuah with all our heart, our soul, and our mind. So we are imparting this ministry of reconciliation within us first, the perfect us, made in the image and likeness of Yahuah Elohim, bringing his reign, his desire on earth as it is in heaven. So tonight we will once again go into the overcomer promise to the Laodicean assembly. I think I actually will have time now to unpack a little bit of what Yahuah has put in my heart, that graciously he's allowed me to put together this past few days. So I'm excited for that. But the overcomer promise is, to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame and am sat down with my Father in his throne. So you're going to see there's two specific thrones. So we'll go into that in a bit. But first, just a recap. We did talk about, and I'm now going to share my screen here. Okay, here we go. So we started off with our little journey back to Genesis chapter 1. And we really glossed through it. We glossed over each of the verses. And we know, and we have, we all understand that there are plenty of teachings out there. And if this is something that you're really into, I would encourage that you go and research on your own and be a Berean and let the Ruach guide you. But there's a few things that I have seen for myself that I wanted to bring to your awareness. And so just a quick recap. I did tell Rish I wasn't sure if today, Sister Yusana, you were going to be here tonight. So I said to her that we were going to postpone the little drawing thing till next Tuesday. So we'll do that. But we did go over the 6-day creation last Tuesday. And so just a quick recap. We know that day 1, light appeared. Day 2 was the firmament. Day 3, earth and sea. So you can see it here on my screen. Day 4 is when the sun, the moon, and the stars were made. Signs and seasons and days and years. These were made for that purpose. Sea creatures and birds were made on day 5th. Day 6, land animals, creeping things, and mankind. And of course, day 7 is the Sabbath rest. Last Tuesday, though, I did refer to the lymphatic system. And I'm going to jump ahead. And I was listening, or I was, I alluded to it briefly, but really the Ruach, led me to or convicted me to go into this a little bit more, because I didn't think it was fair for me to say throw things out without really kind of breaking down what I mean. So, but here is what I'm seeing in Genesis 2:10. You know how just before Adam was, let's go there real quick. So Genesis 2:10. Genesis 2:10 is when Yahuah Elohim starts to talk about the garden in Eden, right? And on verse 10, it talks about this river. A river flowed from the land of Eden, watering the garden, and then dividing into 4 branches. Okay. And also, I believe that this speaks that garden or the land of Eden, right? It seems to be linked, or it seems to be parallel to a heart of, or to our heart. And look at, so Proverbs 4:23, it says, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Or in some translations, rivers of right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to, and I have this picture here in front of the screen, because I also mentioned last Tuesday that, our blood platelets, our blood cells, right? It,
Mm-hmm.
as you can, if you can see, do you see the little
Mm-hmm.
photon or light that's
Yeah.
in it in
Yeah.
the middle? You see how, I heard someone, a doctor, refer to, and her quote was, and I can't remember her name off the top of my remembrance, but she said that
You're
all of our,
frozen again.
oh, okay, all of our 50 trillion plus cells gets a perfect serving of light through our blood platelets. Do you see that? The blood cells. And I wanted to show you a bit of a picture, because it literally, from how it looks, it's wow, we are light beings, right? And we were once, I believe, we were covered in light, just like the scripture says that we were made in the image and likeness of Yahuah. So we're going to talk a little bit. I want to just go into the lymphatic system. But before we go into the lymphatic system, we have to understand the blood cells that we have. So blood, it primarily consists of 40% red blood cells, and the rest is water and proteins. So the proteins and glucose molecules and fats. Okay. So this in front of you is a picture of the lymphatic system. Okay. So there is a zoomed in version towards your right. And you're going to see there is, remember I was talking about, these are like highways in our bodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the zoomed in version here, you'll see that there is a particular blood capillary or blood veins that the red blood cells go to, or they travel all throughout our body. And then you're going to see the lymphatic vessel, the one that is colored in green. And
Mm-hmm.
this highways are basically all over our body, and it touches on all our tissue cells. You see that? Right? So the lymphatic system is extremely, extremely important. Okay. Um, well, the lymph, in other words, lymph is basically comes from the blood cells. Lymph is like, in to simplify things, it's a fluid. It's a clear fluid that is squeezed out between the blood, the capillaries, and so this is like the water part of the blood. And every day we extract, or about 3 liters of water comes out of the blood vessels. And when the water comes out of these tissue cells, of these blood vessels, it has to be sucked up. It has to enter the lymphatic vessels. Okay, so the lymphatic vessel in a simple way of understanding it, it's like a plumbing system in our bodies. It's like a drainage system, right? And that's why, that's why I was saying, I was seeing that Genesis 2, it's talking about the river that's flowing from the land of Eden, and it's watering the garden, and then it divides into 4 branches. And I'll show you what that looks like in the heart. But I wanted to focus on the lymphatic system for now because it's so critically important. Why? It is the largest circulatory system in the body. And one of the main functions of our lymphatic system is to deliver energy, light that I was showing you earlier, to every cell of the body. And this is done after we eat, right? So substances like the fats, the proteins, the carbs that is taken from the food that we eat, they serve as sources of energy once it's processed in our mitochondria. And as you know, the mitochondria, you may or may not know, produces metabolic water. So all of these things are tied, and it's tied to our energy source, okay? So what I was talking about last Tuesday is the flow. Remember, we were talking about river. It's like a river of living water in our body. So the flow of this particular highway in our body is extremely important. One thing also that came to my attention, you probably already know it, but these lymphatic vessels is like a drainage system, right? And as you can see, if you look at the location and some of the main drainage areas that are in our bodies, like for example, in the breast area, like just below or right on the armpit, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
These are one of the main drainage system of the lymphatic system. And what happens is when you go into cancer treatment, specifically chemotherapy, right? Or even when you when there's breast cancer, when there is a diagnosis of breast cancer and the doctor says, let's take off one of the breasts or both breasts, there is a very harmful effect in our lymphatic system. So when it comes to chemotherapy, the very first thing that it attacks is our overall lymphatic system. Right? So, and that's why you're going to notice when it comes to cancer treatments, part of it is always going to be, your white blood cells count is low, right? So we're going to have to address that, or we have to postpone, we have to do all these things before we can proceed. So you're going to see that white blood cells come up a lot. That's basically your lymphatic system. And when breast is taken out, a part of it, or both, or they have no choice but to cut through the drainage system of the lymphatic part of. So this is why, as you can see, I just wanted to point out that, when we undertake or we consider these treatments that they suggest, that they prescribe to patients, it actually has a very dire impact on what is so critically important. And so now we wonder, why is it so important? Because like we said, it's the energy source of our bodies, okay? And then we talked last Tuesday about how interruptions or stagnation can cause a disruption to the flow of our lymphatic system. So the picture that you see here, I just want you to look at it real quick. The top part here is like what these tissue cells are supposed to look like. You see how they're intact, they have just the right amount of fluid that's in there. So even there's a little bit of fluid in there, this is still called like a dry cell from my understanding. Okay. But if you look at the bottom picture, this is what happens to our tissue cells when there's a buildup of fluid. You see that? You see how it swells compared to what it's supposed to be at the top? right? So and I'm going to explain how that happens. See, the lymph vessel, it doesn't have this high pressure pump that our blood arteries get from the heart. Okay, so we have our heart. I think I have a picture here. I think, maybe I don't. But our heart, the blood, the red blood cells, here it is. When it enters the blood or the heart, it has to go through a very high pressure system to be able to distribute all the blood cells, the red blood cells, all throughout our body. And it is considered like a closed system, right? But when it comes to the lymph system, it is not a closed system. It's like a one-way kind of a system. And it doesn't have, as you can see, it's not connected at all to the heart. It may look like that, but no. The main connection of the lymphatic system is right here, just above the heart. Now, above the heart is where low pressure system or low pressure movement happens. Okay? So what does that mean? If the lymphatic system, the white blood cells, the water that goes through our bodies, it doesn't get a high pressure movement from the heart. Why is it so important for us to pay attention to the flow of it? Because the way the flow of liquid happens in our lymphatic system is done through stimulation of our muscle movement. Do you understand now? So this is why you're seeing me bouncing up and down, this little movement that I'm doing through this bouncy ball. When we were talking earlier about Yusana is familiar, Sister Yusana is talking about the dry brushing, right? Exercise, going up and down. What do you call those things that we bought?
Trampoline.
The trampoline. Yes. So these types of movement stimulates the flow of the liquid in our lymph vessels, and we need it. Okay. So on top of that, so we have the natural muscle movement. Our lymph vessels also have valves that are that only allows fluid to flow through one directionally. So these are very good valves, very high efficient. The way Yahuah made our body is amazing. Mm-hmm. And you know how we think that hearts have pumps? Actually, that is a misnomer. Hearts do not have pumps. In fact, they just have the same valves that allows for the flow of the liquid. So there's no such thing as pump. That's the net effect of the way these valves work. Okay. So one thing we also need to understand, our body has natural electromagnetic signals that controls our muscle movement. Okay. And if we've touched a little bit on how that works, we know that our body we are definitely biological, electrical, chemical beings. Okay, so we have natural electromagnetic, and that stimulates muscle movement.
That's why they use the pacemaker for people who have trouble in heart functioning. They put the pacemaker.
What does the pace? Oh, so it works with the signals in our body.
Yeah.
And that's how they read. Is that what it is? The results in the pacemakers?
They stimulate the valves of the heart. I think it's part of the valve. It's not functioning normally, so they have to put a pacemaker.
See, that's good. See, I didn't know that. Now I understand why they need to put pacemakers to help the valves. So maybe their valves in their hearts are somehow not working. It's dysfunctional, right? That's well, as you now we have studied in the past how many months that our emotions have frequencies, right? We know that our hypothalamus, when it releases hormones in response to our emotions, when we get upset or we're stressed, we emit electrical impulses that energizes Look at this. The metabolic water that runs through our lymph vessels. So because this is water, basically, you know how water, the movement through water, that is how these electrical impulses are energized as well, right? So when you think of an emotional disruption because of a stressful condition that you have just entered into, this is like the same effect as an electric shock. So you know how this happens in a pool or a body of water? It gets energized, and what happens, so let's say something energizes this pool of water, it overwhelms our body's natural electrical signals. So what happens is it 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 compromises, it does some negative impact to the muscles that stimulates the movement of the liquid that goes through our lymph vessels, right? So this causes blockages, right? When there's
Yeah.
blockages, as you can imagine, if you look at a river and you add a big rock to it or some kind of object, then what happens is there's a stagnation effect, net effect in the latter, right? So
Mm.
this is what I was talking about. This is referred to as lymphatic obstruction. It is when a blockage of the lymph vessels that drain the fluid from the tissues throughout the body. Remember, we were talking about here. So here, the bottom picture shows you that there seemed to be no drainage happening. So if you look at if the lymphatic system is like a plumbing system, then you're looking at a dysfunctional toilet. And what does that do? It just pours water all over the bathroom, and that's not good, right? So, so that's what it does. And what happens is when there's blockages, then it now the our immune it disallows immune cells to travel where they are needed, right? So lymphatic obstruction causes, there's a term here, lymphedema, which basically means swelling due to a blockage of the lymph passages. So based on this little bit of picture of understanding, we know that this particular lymphatic system is susceptible to stress, uniquely in fact. So even this is what I was talking about yesterday, Mom, when we were talking about in the process of cancer. Stress acts as a fertilizer for cancer as well, because it helps the cancer cells spread through the body's lymphatic system. So that's another study for another time. Or maybe you can do that on your own. But the point is, we have to understand that when we enter into stressful conditions, we are impacting the flow of that river of living water that flows through our body. You know, and it's amazing if you go into, if you study what else it does. So the fluid of water, it picks up all of the bacteria, any pathogens that may have entered into that has infected a specific area of a tissue of our body. It picks it up, right? And what it does is, in our bodies, okay, we have about 500 to 700 lymph nodes. So lymph
Mm.
nodes is basically like the filtration system. So again, you know how we pick up water from the lake and we filter that through the water stations? So it's like that. You know, the water stations, the water filtration systems or companies, they filter all of the filth and the bacteria. So we have 500 to 700 lymph nodes.
Mm.
And then as the water, as the liquid travels through the lymph vessels, it goes through these lymph nodes. And then once that is done, the water gets dumped back into the red blood cells. It's beautiful. So, you know, and this is definitely a part of our immunity response, right? Our autoimmune. So, very, very key. And now And same thing, because you know how we've talked about how these are energy related. This is a source of energy for the body. So when these lymphatic system becomes congested, energy levels can drop. Okay, and what happens is you'll see that, you know, certain fats can be stored around the belly, and we increase, and that, you know, is as a result of that is weight gain. So, and this is what I was talking about last Tuesday. Just because you are eating, you know, some people, they're eating, you know, they're not eating as much junk food or whatever it is, and yet they're increasing weight gain. Why is that? Could it be a problem with lymphatic system, right? Could there be congestion? Could there be stagnation somewhere happening, right? So Proverbs 13:12. Look at this. Hope deferred. If you look at the word deferred, well, this hope deferred makes the heart sick. You see that? The word deferred, if you look it up, the definition of that is postpone, delay, put off, or put back. So now do you see how when we are depressed, that's basically our hope gets deferred, makes the heart sick, right? But when the desire comes, it's like a tree of life. And we know that Psalms 1 says, you shall be like a tree planted by the river water, right? So there's a little bit of that connection there, right? And look at this, blood cells and bone marrow connection. Okay, the way I see this is, you know, this is basically like the bone marrow, we know, is where the red and white blood cells are produced. Okay, on Proverbs 15:30, look at this. It says, "The light of the eyes rejoices the heart, and a good report makes the bones healthy." Do you see the connection between the heart and the bones? And do you see why it's connected? Because the common denominator is the blood, the red and white blood cells, right? Proverbs 17:22, a merry heart. I think this is what you were referring to earlier, sister. A merry heart does good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones.
Yeah, also, Pastor Wright had a testimony about a woman who was allergic to everything, like even the clothes. You know, she was in a foiled room with, you know, like a bubble, and she could only eat beets.
Oh.
And she called for help. So she told him that she cannot come there to Georgia. So he had to go there to see her. And he said, okay, I'll give you 10 days. And then on the way there, he asked God, you know, what could be the problem? What to give him something, you know? And he gave this verse, Proverbs 17:22, a merry heart does good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries the bones. So he said, well, she doesn't have osteoporosis. She said allergy and multiple allergies, you know, from environmental illness. So he thought, what with the bones? So then he said, oh yes, in the bones is the immune system.
Yes.
And then, you know, when he got there, they asked, what does he have for them? He said, well, I don't know, but who hurt you so badly? That, and she started crying, you know.
Yes.
And she got well in 10 days, you know. In 10 days, she was able to eat and to dress and all that, you know.
Wow. So it sounds to me, and Dr. Wright made the connection that has to do with the bone. So she's broken in spirit, right? And because there's probably a lack of production of white blood cells, and that's why it's causing her severe allergy, because her body isn't able to, you know, respond to pathogens. You know, we don't understand this. Just because we're not sick, it doesn't mean we didn't a pathogen has not entered our bodies. We think pathogens enter our bodies all the time, all the
Yes.
time. And our bodies, the way it's designed, in our tissue cells, we have these local police, kind of like, or security guards, you would call them, and they're like called macrophages, local macrophages. And when they see an invader, it eats it, right? And then when the lymphatic system, the draining system, goes through, it sucks out the macrophage. It puts it into the flow of water until it hits the lymph nodes. The lymph nodes, we know there's plenty of them. This is the filtration system. Inside the lymph nodes, think of it as a specialized unit, like a campground, where the T bones and the B cells train, and they are trained to specifically address specific invaders. So our bodies are beautifully designed. And so this is why, when you wake up in the morning and you feel great, man, praise Yahuah, because we don't understand, these things. We don't understand how beautifully designed we are, and how truly we are our own doctors. Our bodies, Yahuah designed us to heal, to restore, to 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 respond and attack these things and eject them, right? And this is why, look at this, Hebrews 4:12. So now we understand, and great example of Dr. Wright, how the connection with the bone marrow and our immunity, right? Our immune system. In Hebrews 4:12, in the Aramaic translation, this is how it reads: For the word of God is living and completely effective, and sharper than a two-edged sword, and enters all the way to the separation of soul and of spirit. Look at this. And of the joints and of the marrow and of the bones, and judges the reasonings and thoughts of the heart. See, even our bones have three parts, right? You know how parallel this is with our makeup, with our brain? Amazing stuff. Joints, marrow, and bones. And look at this. The word for joint in Aramaic can also be translated as membrane or covering. How amazing is that? So the three parts of the inside of a bone are the marrow, and the marrow is surrounded by the actual bone cells. And this is where the blood vessels are. And outside of that is the membrane. So that membrane is that hard substance. Okay. So, and what this is saying is that this combination of three parts of our bones, it is very difficult to slice between these three parts because they're so intricately fused together, right? And it can only be done with the very sharpest of knife. And we know that the word of Yahuah is sharp, is quick, right? So it's sharper than any two-edged sword. Beautiful. And so I think we've done a good job of talking about the lymphatic system. And now I want to just zero in a little bit on the heart, because I think this is going to be so amazing. I don't know if you've heard of this, but Genesis 2:10, again, I believe this is an allusion to the heart. And you know how it says a river flowed from the land of Eden, watering the garden and then dividing into four branches. So our heart is divided into two separate systems, two pumping systems. But this system is branches into four chambers. Isn't that amazing? It's the two are atria and the two are called ventricles. So what does it mean? So in a nutshell, the right atrium of our heart, it receives oxygen depleted blood from the veins. And the right ventricle pump, so the job of that is to pump that, or to move the oxygen depleted blood into our lungs. And from there, it picks up oxygen and it gets rid of the carbon dioxide. And then what happens is the left part of our heart, atrium, receives oxygen-rich blood from our lungs, and it pumps it to the left ventricle, to our arteries, and to the rest of our body. And I don't know if you noticed there, but It may not be exactly blue, but definitely when our blood cells is been depleted in oxygen, they
Mm.
refer to this as blue blood. And I don't know, I've seen other articles. It may look, I don't think it's actually blue, but it may be close to the color blue. But what happens is the color of the blood is clearly different when it is depleted
It's
with oxygen.
brighter red.
Exactly. So what
It's
happens is
brighter
when
red.
it picks up oxygen from the lungs, when it comes out, when once again it's ready, right,
It's
to
darker. It's
it's
darker.
bright red, exactly. And
Mhm.
what I thought I'd bring up here is, there is only one species known on Earth that has blue blood, literally blue blood. Do you know what it is? It's the horseshoe crab. You want to see how it looks like? You see
Mm.
it? So the crab, the reason why their blood is blue, it's pretty simple. It's there's no oxygen, right? So so even in looking at this, if you look at this, if you look at the heart, the way our heart works, it's actually a picture of resurrection. You know,
Mm.
it enters this little cave as no breath, dead, blood, right? And then it comes out. It comes out with life, rich, bright red. So even in this very design of the way our heart works, it is a picture of resurrection. Beautiful, right? So now here's the other interesting part that I see. The red blood cells, we were looking at Revelation 3:18. I don't think I read it earlier, but last Tuesday, I think. I think I'm getting my verses confused because even Richmond used this in his message or his teaching, and we didn't talk about it, but he referred to it, and it was just amazing how the Ruach works. But Revelation 3:18, this is tied to the overcomer promise to the Laodicean church. It says, I counsel thee to buy of me gold, tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, and that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear. I read this Revelation 3:18 and I see, this is just me, I see the part here of the gold, the red blood cells and the white blood cells. How? Why? Because first of all, we know that this part is talking about nakedness. So it's talking about a white raiment. Think of the white blood cells. It's basically a clear liquid. It's clear, right? And then the gold tried in the fire. Buy of me gold that thou mayest be rich. And
Mm.
so if you think about gold, here's an interesting article I came across with in 2011. This is an article that came out, so it's probably a little bit changed now. I don't know, but it is estimated that there are only 20 years worth of gold. So minus how many years? 9 years left in the world that can be easily mined. So it looks like there's not a lot of gold left that can be
Mm.
easily mined, according to this article. But it does say that gold occur in other places. And do you know where that is? Our bodies. Did you
Mm.
know that we have gold in our bodies? And yeah, so we contain about zero point 0.2 milligrams. I don't know if that's a lot. I can't imagine it. But zero point 0.2 milligrams. And guess what? Most of it is in our blood.
Mm.
So in human blood and nanotechnology, these are termed as gold nanoparticle, and that's the element, the abbreviation for it. But this is why I see here in Revelation 3:18, you know what? Yahuah wants us to be, rich in the oxygen in our red blood cells, right? He wants us to be rich with the ruach so that we can be alive in the spirit. We can be, that source of, in the scripture says, out of our belly, Yahusha's belly flow rivers of flowing, river of flowing of river water. I can't speak right tonight. So, and same thing with the white raiment. I think that um, right now we've got the red blood cells and the white blood cells. I think this has something to do again with the fall. I don't think that this is how it's going to be when we are restored back in the kingdom, back to the Garden of Eden conditions. So just thought that I'd go a little bit deeper into the talk about our lymphatic system and show you some interesting things about our blood, about the blue and the red and the white, and how it kind of ties to the Revelation 3:18. So so now I want to get into the nitty gritty of what I wanted to talk about tonight, and it really has to do with dominion and authority, stemming from the overcomer to the Laodicean assembly that we talked about earlier. Okay, and again, that is I think I have it here, and that is the to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame and am sat down with my Father's throne. So one of the things that I know we glossed over the chapter 1 of Genesis. We didn't even really finish it last Tuesday, but one of the things that we have to notice in Genesis 1, and we're going to go back there now, is dominion is hinted all over. Okay, so and we're gonna see that Yahuwah's his word is so powerful. Okay, you know how we talked about day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're gonna notice that from the creation of the firmament, creation of the land animals, the bird animals, the stars and the moon, we're going to notice Yahuwah saying, or Elohim saying, let, right? See, verse 3, Shem was talking about in the Hebrew, there really isn't the word let. It just says, then Elohim said light, and light came. So I want to exclude that because there's a special purpose for that. I mean, this is Yahusha manifest before us right in the first few verses of Genesis chapter 1. This is Yahusha. So the word, Yahuwah's word, basically hinted light, and there was light, and light came. But if you look at the rest of the creation, it says, let there be a firmament. Let. And you know what the let is followed by? And it was so. Notice that. When it talks about the waters, let the waters, right? Verse 9, and it was so. And then it says, let the dry land, let the earth bring forth grass. And then what happens? What's the response? So yeah, Elohim initiated it with his word. He released, he said it, he spoke. And the response was, it was so. You notice that? And same here, let there be lights. Even the lights, the stars, the moon, and it was so. And then waters, and it was so. We're going to keep going here, and the fifth day, let, and it was so. Now here's the interesting part where when on verse 26, you're gonna notice, then Elohim said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds, over the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Do you see anything here that says, and it was so? I can keep reading. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And then God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on earth. Nothing. You see that? But here's when it comes back. You know when it comes back? When Elohim I believe this is the very first Torah of food. Elohim said, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Again, it seems to be talking to the man and the male and female. But now on verse 30, look what he directs his attention to. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food. Again, look at this. And it was so. I just wanted you to see that. I wanted you to see that there is a bit of a difference there. Okay? And what am I talking about? Dominion is hinted all over chapter 1 of Genesis. You know, Elohim, when he says, let, the creative power of his word, the created says, it is done. It was so. So does it make sense now that his creation is in obedience of him? You see that? Can you imagine what would happen when the sun or the moon doesn't obey their course? What happens when the plants and the trees and the animals don't obey what they're supposed to do? Could be pretty chaotic, right? So we're going to talk about dominion here. And, you know, why is it that you don't see the response per se on verse 26, 27, and 28? Or sorry, 26 and 27 and and 28. It doesn't seem to have that response that says, and it was so. Why is that? Because why? Because we see that Yahuah's or Elohim's dominion has been shared, has been given to mankind. Do you see the point? So in other words, we have free will, is what I'm trying to get at. Right? Do you see that? There is free will hinted in the first few verses of Genesis chapter 1. Dominion is from the Most High. And if we read it very carefully, the Genesis chapter 1, we're going to see that it is inter and multi-dimensional. The dominion from the Most High is inter and multi-dimensional. If you read Genesis all throughout, you're going to see there's hints of different dimensions already in existence in the time that this was written, or in the stage of the way this picture is being, it's being pictured for us, right? So you're going to see there is the face of the deep. You're going to also see face of the firmament. You're going to see face of the earth, face of the waters. I just can't, it's a little hard for me to see it, but in my favorite New King James Bible, I can quickly point it to you, but you can make notes for now and you can, search it yourself. But there are already different dimensions here that's hinted at in the very first chapter of Genesis 1. So that talks about Elohim's dominion, the Most High's dominion. His dominion is everlasting. It transcends time and space. Why? Because we know that, the sun and the stars and the moon was not created till day 4, right? So, and his dominion is from generation to generation and to the ends of the earth. That's what the scripture says. And you can find verses that supports that. But if we look at the definition of dominion, according to Google search of definition, it's in a nutshell sovereignty or control, a supreme ruler, especially a monarch. That's interesting, a monarch. But I want to break down the word sovereignty, because I think dominion. I mean, we can kind of use dominion. Think of dominion as minions, right? I have no problem being called Yahuah's minion, right? So like his little mini me, right? So that's pretty simple. But if you take the word sovereignty and let's break it down, I think it's pretty cool. You know, sovereignty, the prefix of it, so, you know, you can kind of infer that it comes from the word salvation, or in Greek, it's called sozo. Okay, so if you look up the word salvation in Strong's in the Greek, you're going to see that it is from the word sozo. So it is, sozo in Greek is used in 3 different ways: to save from certain death, to be healed, salvation, or getting born again. So in the word sovereignty, you can see a hint of salvation, the word salvation in that word. Now, obviously, in the middle of the word, you're going to be able to kind of see the word reign. And we know what reign means: rulership and kingdom, right? I was amazed, and I was just checking to see if there's anything to the word, to the letters ver. So ver, so sovereignty, ver. And ver, the Latin root word of ver, guess what? It means truth. Isn't that amazing? Or true. This root is the word origin of a fair number of English vocabulary words, including verdict and veracity, but the root ver is easily recalled through the word very, for when something is very good and it's truly good. So it's kind of like, you know, what Elohim said when he made day 6. He said, it's very good. So look at the, you know, we can break down a little bit of what dominion is just by looking at the word sovereignty. And T, or TY, you know, the last 2 letters of sovereignty, I think of city. So it's this, there's rulership, there's salvation based on truth, rulership over a city. So I think of Melchizedek, I think of the new Jerusalem. So dominions, kingdoms, and realms in chapter 1, we're going to see, this is what I was talking about. There's many different facets that chapter 1 is referred to. So face of the deep, face of the waters, face of the firmament, face of all the earth, face of the ground. Interesting stuff. I see this as, you know, different realms. And you know what? Dominion is sort of alluded to as an earthly example in Solomon's reign. So 1 King 4:24, it says, Solomon's dominion extended over all the kingdoms west of the Euphrates River, from Tifsha to Gaza, and there was peace on all his borders. So Yahuwah's, Elohim's dominion from him is, you know, it encompasses so many different realms. Okay, what else can we think about when we look at the word dominion? You know, inferring to the scripture, death and sin cannot overtake or can even come near Yahuwah's dominion. Okay, so we sort of been talking about dominion, but I wanted to compare it with authority. So authority, on the other hand, can be thwarted. It can be twisted and be taken over by the enemy. So in contrast with Yahuwah's dominion, even death cannot overtake it. So authority is earned or given. And we can see that Matthew 28:18, it says, Yahusha came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. And look at the specific areas, but even Yahusha himself, he declares that his authority has been given to him. Amazing. Zechariah 10:12. By my power, I will make my people strong, and by my authority, they will go wherever they wish. I, Yahuah, have spoken. Matthew 10:1. Yahusha called his 12 disciples together and gave them authority to cast out evil spirits and to heal every kind of disease and illness. So I wanted to, just for you to start seeing, what is the difference between dominion and authority? So authority is something that is given. Matthew 20:25, Yahusha called them together and said, "You know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people. They take advantage over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them." So, in other words, you know, the authority can puff you up, right? It can puff you, and it's something that can be taken away, or it needs to be enforced, right? Because you can infer from this verse that, you know, the rulers of this world seems to be taking advantage of the subjects of their people, and they seem to be puffed up when it comes to their authority. So what is the definition of authority? Authority: the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. You see that? Enforce. A person or organization having power or control in a particular, typically political or administrative sphere. So as you can see, authority seems to be localized. It seems to be, you know, it can be used for evil purposes. It has to be enforced, you know. So Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, which makes sense. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. So now we look at the geopolitical, we look at, you know, the news, the CNN, and we see all the injustice and the corruption that's happening in the governments all over the world and here in Canada, whatever. I don't really follow it, but I tend to discourage you from watching too much news. I know I tell my dad that because um, it is actually a scientific fact that when you watch too much news, it actually invokes certain emotions that's not good for you, and it can lead to certain diseases, what's the word? I can't remember that disease. Dad, do you remember what that disease I was talking to you about? Dementia, and what's the other one?
Dementia,
Dementia, and there's another one.
Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's disease. So I'm not making that up. You can Google search that your own. Watching too much CNN can lead to these kinds of diseases. And we can go into the science as to why that is. But simply put, this, you know, whatever they feed you on the news feed, and they do it repetitively over and over again, it takes away your purpose. It takes away, it gives you nothing but bad news. I mean, once in a while they'll probably give good news, but and it just you just you know, examine how you feel after you watch news. Just you know, watch half an hour and check how you feel. Do you feel good? Right? So anyway, so yeah, I discourage that you watch for you to watch too much news. Fill yourself with the word of Yahuah. That is the health unto your flesh and strength unto your bones. But going back to what I was trying to express here, Acts 26:10, authority again, we can see that it's given. It can be given by man. It says here, which thing I also did in Jerusalem, and many of the saints did I shut up in prison, having received authority from the chief priests. And when they were put to death, I gave my voice against them. I think this is Paul speaking. And so even Paul, before his transformation, or before his crossing over, he received authority from the chief priest to do what he was doing, when he was persecuting the set apart people of Yahuah. Now, even in Revelation 13:2, look at the authority can be given by the dragon. Look at this. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Right? So again, authority seems to be susceptible to wickedness, to being overtaken by the enemy. But we know, though, we know that there is that perfect authority that was given to Yahusha by Yahuah, right? And we can see that in John 12:49. Let's just turn there. I'm just gonna turn there so we can see. Control V, I believe. So I'm just going to John 12:49. It says, "For I," this is Yahusha speaking, "for I have not spoken on my own authority, but the Father who sent me gave me a command what I should say and what I would speak." You see that? John 14:10. Let's look at that, because it's important for us to see the difference. So John 14:10 says, "Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father in me?" Right? The words that I speak, this is Yahusha speaking to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does the works. You see that? So Yahusha spoke with authority, and people were amazed by his authority. See, the difference here is what? Authority that we get, or that Yahusha has, you're going to notice it is to build up, not to tear down, right? And I, Second Corinthians, I think I wrote down the verse here. 2 Corinthians 10:8 says, "I may seem to be boasting too much about the authority given to us by Yahuah, but our authority," this is Paul speaking, "builds you up. It doesn't tear you down. So I will not be ashamed of using my authority." Okay, give me 1 second here. I'm just going to quickly. So as we can see that the scripture is clear, starting to give us a little bit more clarity on what the difference is between Yahusha's authority and the authority that can be thwarted. Now, going back again, Elohim says, let, he says, let. Creation responds with, it was so. This is obedience. So when, and we were talking about how we see that as dominion. That is more than just authority. That is dominion. And why would Elohim's creation obey? And if you think about it, you know, they really, that's the purpose. That's why they're made, to keep things in order, so that, you know, that's a resource for us. So yes, they don't have free will. You know, they are created to obey Yahuah, and they are glad to do it. Have you seen that verse? I can't think of where it is, but the son, I'll put the bridegroom. I'll show you how a little bit of a picture of how excited the son obeys Yahuwah's word. I keep referring to it and I keep forgetting to put it in. Here we go. Psalms 19. Look at this Psalm 19 here. It says, "For their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tabernacle for the sun, which is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoices like a strong man to run its race. Its rising is from one end of heaven, and its circuit to the other end." You see that? And there's nothing hidden from its heat. Do you see that even the sun is so proud? He's so excited to obey the course that he has been created to undertake, right? And we know in Romans that creation, it's not that creation disobeyed. Creation never disobeyed, but was subject to futility, not willingly. This is what the words of Paul is in Romans 8, I think, Romans 8 or 7. But again, we we can see the response of creation to Yahuah Elohim's the power of his word, his dominion. Okay, but we talked about it earlier. Notice how when I was pointing out to you in Genesis 26 and 27, Genesis 1, 26, 27, you're not going to see man respond, and it was so. You're not going to see that. So it seems to talk about the free will of man. Okay, so what is it like to have dominion then? Okay, so and again, the word of Yahweh, it gets so inexhaustible. This is just to simplify things. Okay, I'm not saying this is it, but this is just to help us understand a little bit of what dominion is like in comparison to authority. Okay, so when you think of dominion, think of 3 P's. Okay, the letter P. One is place. Okay, second, position. Third is person. So the first one is place. When you think of dominion, Adam was planted in the garden where he has access to the tree of life. This was immortality to him. This was his heavenly habitation. And, it's interesting. Adam was appointed to be there. That was his place of dominion. Or I think that it is a representative of the Most High. So he's like the first Melchizedek, but he's been given a place where it is literally heaven on earth, where he can walk with Yahuwah in the cool of the day, right? Where he can have that place where there's none like it on earth, right? So we know that this is a special place where his dominion is as an example of how Yahweh wants to really enlarge. I believe that the Garden of Eden is just a beginning, was a beginning, and it was supposed to be enlarged. The scripture talks about enlarge my borders or territory, but that didn't quite happen. And I believe that that's going to happen in Revelation when everything is put back to the way it was. But think of place, and if there's anything else you want to add to that, please, let me know, or maybe add it. If there's anything else you can think of, but I want to move to the letter P, the second P, which is position. Adam was appointed to be in that most holy place. I already said that, priest to Yahuwah. And he was given the task to guard and tend it. So if you think about it, his position, his appointment, if you really think about it, is like co-ownership, right? We have these timeshares that we are kind of familiar with, but I don't even know why I brought that up, because it's not even close to what this is, not even a hint close. But think of it as co-ownership. If you were to go to like a beautiful, luxurious resort, it's nice to be there. You're able to enter the place, you're able to experience the beauty of it, to behold it, right? It's nice to be served by the people that work there. You have a nice bedroom, you have access to all kinds of amenities. But the question is, do you have the right to any of the furnishings? Do you have the right to the properties, to the pets? Like, do you have the right to the servants? Do you have, can you tell them, if you feel like there should be a certain way to be of service to others, can you implement that? If you feel like this furniture should have a different type of color, or this, the painting should be moved from one wall to the other, would you really have the right to do that? And the answer, of course, is no, right? In the example of a resort. But,
No hearing you.
Oh, can you hear me okay now? Hello? Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Saying that in Adam's case, he had a special position in the garden, right? And how do I know he has, how do we know that he has co-ownership rights? Because Adam was given the right to name the animals, right? This speaks volumes about the way Yahuah is allowing Adam to experience the garden. He was allowing Adam to exercise his gifts and abilities to beautify, to decorate. And, and think about it. Yahuah gave him animals to see how he would name him. That's the way the scripture alludes to it, right? So it's a special, Adam being in the garden, right, in the position that he was, hints a little bit of what dominion is like. He was to guard the garden. In the garden seem to, in Hebrew, if you look at the Hebrew word for that, it's like an enclosure. So it's definitely a set apart place, right? So again, dominion is place, position, and thirdly, it's a person. And I think this is where the special part about dominion, what it's like to be given dominion by Yahuah, because to be able to give up. So if you look at Adam, right, he had everything. He had access to everything that he could ever want or need in the garden, and yet, Yahuwah saw in Adam the need to be able to share all of the resources that Yahuwah has given him, right? Yahuwah saw that in him. That's why Yahuwah says, I see that there should be a helpmeet for Adam, right? That's why there is a question, or there is an allusion to help meet. And I'm going to try to go there to see, because Yahuwah alludes to it twice. And he says, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper comparable to him. So this is when he allowed the beasts of the field, the birds, to be formed out of the ground, and he gave them to Adam to see what he would call them. And then obviously Adam did the exercising his giftings and his abilities and named all the cattle and the birds. And then again, Yahuwah caused, he basically still caused a deep sleep to fall on him. And he took a part of him and closed up the flesh and made a woman out of him. So the point I'm saying is, Adam on his own, he had access to everything. He had all the resources at his fingertip. He was in a special place. He was given a special position. And yet something is unique about Adam, because he still needed to, it's like Yahuwah Elohim knew or saw that Adam would be fulfilled if he was able to share all of these resources, this power, this place, this position that he has with another. And, this speaks of the character of Yahuwah, for him to see and allow Adam to walk out the character of Yahuwah, which is what? We know that Yahuwah is love. So when Adam gave himself to die for Eve, this is the greatest of all. It is love, because love is eternity. It is the tree of life. So it is very special, So dominion is special in the personhood, because this is unique. So if we look at ourselves, and if we understand that we have been given dominion over this earth, over the 5 kingdoms that I was talking about in Genesis 1, over the birds, over the seas, over the beast, over all the earth, even the creeping things. If you understand what that is, right? And it really boils down to the position, right? The place and the personhood and the uniqueness of what it's like to be in dominion over the earth as Yahuwah has appointed us. So if you think about it, we are all unique. There is no one else like us on earth. And this, and I think I've mentioned this before and I'm going to say it again, this is scientifically proven. DNA present in each and every one of us can have variations, but when the whole genome is sequenced, each DNA is unique. Okay? So all in all, right, the 3 P's of dominion, the place, position, person, can also be paralleled with the body, soul, and spirit. And really the authority through Yahusha. He is seated far above all principality and power and might and dominion and every name that is named, not only in this age, but also in that which is to come. So really, we have been given dominion, but because of the fall, we now need to have Yahusha's authority to take that back. Does that make sense? Dominion and authority, love, right? And really reverence of Yahuwah. But at the same time, we've talked about how the authority can also be taken over by the enemy. So how does the enemy muddy up authority? How does the enemy, like mess up authority? By instilling fear is the quick answer to that, right? So dominion is all about influence, right? It's about the 3 P's. It's about the wholesomeness of the love of Yahuwah for us to be able to walk that out in influence. Authority, on the other hand, can be thwarted by the enemy, and fear can be used as a weaponry or as a means to enforce authority. So how do we kind of make this practical? Okay. So I have a couple questions, and the questions are meant to make you think about what the difference is, because I'm trying to drive a point. Okay. So the first few questions that I have, okay. So you didn't realize the road. So you're driving, right? You're on the road. Now you didn't realize that the road transitioned to a school zone and you're still driving at 60 kilometers per hour until you notice a police car drive by. So what's your auto response? Like, what's your automatic response when you quickly realize that you're in a school zone, which is 40 kilometers per hour, and then you spot a police car and you're driving 20 kilometers above the speed limit, right? What's your first response, right? Don't you abruptly hit the brake? Or just think, I just want you to think about how you feel when that happens. Or what about you're getting coffee from Tim Hortons drive by and you've unbuckled your seatbelt because you're trying to reach for something, and then all of a sudden an officer walks by and gestures for you to put your seatbelt on. When you see that authority figure, right? How do you feel? And we have to be honest with us. So I don't know about you guys, but for me, I can't help but feel fear, right? It's like this your heart almost stops, and then, oh, what if what if he gives me a ticket? What if I get stopped? What if this could cost me money? Like, there's so many things, and it's just our auto response is
Mm-hmm.
is fearful, right? And we worry, and sometimes we quickly think about all the possibilities that could happen. So we can't help but feel fear, right? So that is the kind of authority man has, is my point, right? So the question is, do you drive within limit, or do you buckle your seatbelt because you believe in road safety? Or are you doing it just so that you can avoid getting caught by an officer? So these are the kind of questions that I wanted to ask, because I wanted to drive a point. In these questions, you can see the difference between dominion and authority. So what's the
Mm.
point? When you are doing things because you believe in road safety, It's different. You're not caught off guard, or you're, in other words, you're over and above the authority, having to be put in a position where you are fearing authority. So really, in other words, it's the intent behind your decision. Are you doing things to preserve life and that you want to be a good influence to others? Or is it fear-based because you don't want to get caught and pay a fine? That's what my next point was. So really, so now dominion versus authority by man, influence or love versus fear. So think of it this way. Let's say you're driving, right? And your daughter in the back seat, let's say you just, for some reason, you don't want to put your seatbelt on. Okay. And it's like your daughter in the back seat says, "Hey mom, come on. Why don't you have your seatbelt buckled? What if something happens, and something might happen to you and we all get hurt." Right? So do you see the point? So you put on your seatbelt because you're doing it because you care about preservation of life, as opposed to getting fear-based reaction from being stopped over or being given a ticket by an officer. So really, it is relationship versus no relationship, right? Responsibility to drive versus license to drive. So do you see my point here? So dominion, when Yahuah gives us dominion, you really have a responsibility. So your responsibility goes back to the 3 P's, which is you have been given a place to have dominion over, right? Which is the earth, right? You have been given a position. You have been given a person. You have been uniquely made. You've been given a certain unique type of influence, is my point. That is dominion, right? So if you look at the responsibility that we have in the dominion that we have from Yahuah, it is our ability to respond. So it is your ability to respond to the ability that Yahuah has given us, right? So what does that mean? This requires consciousness. This requires our higher thinking, the 5 senses, you know, um, dominion, or in understanding our responsibility under the 3 P's. This is something that we learn, right? This is something that is an enabler, right? So if you look at, for example, our example for the driving example, are you looking at it from a perspective of responsibility to drive, or are you driving for the heck of it and you're just trying to preserve your license so you don't get caught, right? So when you are looking and focused at the responsibility part, that part, your driving on the road gives you gain, right? It enables you to get to places. It gives you access to be able to do your job, to be able to drive your children to, develop their skills and abilities, for you to go around and buy groceries. In other words, you can't fake that, right? You cannot, you can't fake that, right? If you can't pretend that you're being responsible. Do you see my point? Versus when you have a simple license to drive, right? That can be taken away from you, right? Because let's say you get caught, right? License, you have to earn it. And license also can be counterfeited, right? It can be counterfeited. So this is the difference between dominion and authority. Dominion, you can't fake that. That's the real deal. And it does increase you, right? It increases you. It expands your border. It expands the position, the place that Yahuah has given you to have dominion over. It promotes you to a high position, as high as, guess what? You are seated in heavenly places in Yahushua HaMashiach. That's dominion, right? It enables you to embark or to express the Yah given unique capabilities and abilities and giftings that you have. You cannot fake that, is my point. And you know what? No matter what, I think, even how technologically advanced we can get, I don't think that the enemy will ever get to a point that it can ever match or even come near the dominion of Yahuwah. Whereas authority, it's something that you have to earn, right? It's something that, if you don't meet the conditions of the terms of the authority that's been given to you, it can be taken away from you, right? And and if you think about it, licensing or driving, just the mere fact and ability to drive can be automated. Because if you think about some of the automated cars now, right? Like the self-driving cars that we see in the smart cities, right? They just have to be licensed to be driven that way, like, auto self-driving capability. So this is, basically what I'm trying to express is there is a difference between the dominion, because it is spiritual, right? It is the tree of life, right? The authority, on the other hand, is subject to corruption, right? It's like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Do you see that? And Paul refers to this in Romans, where he says, you know what, we are not going to focus on the letter of the law, but we're going to aim for the spirit of the law. So in other words, when it comes to traffic laws, what is the spirit behind traffic laws? Is it to put law in order for the preservation of life and peace? Or do we focus all our energies and thinking and having to know all of the hundreds of Ontario traffic laws, right? So this is the difference, authority versus dominion. Dominion is something that Yahuwah can give in him alone. You notice that? Dominion is something that can source only from Yahuwah. Authority, right, outside of Yahusha can be given by man, right? And Romans 7:6, that's what I was talking about. We are delivered from the law, that being dead, wherein we were held, that we should serve in newness of spirit and not in the oldness of the letter, right? So dominion exercises Yah given responsibility in love. How do we do that? Through influence to give or maintain life. Authority through Yahusha overcomes the darkness, principalities, powers, might here on earth because of the fall. And we know that all of these things will be restored back to its original state. So Yahuwah's dominion is appointed over the earth, and authority through Yahusha is what the overcomer promised to the Laodicean assembly is all about. It's like the threefold cord that Ecclesiastes talks about, right? That the threefold cord is not easily broken, right? Because Yahuwah wants to, has given the authority, all the authority to Yahusha. And Yahusha has seated on his right hand. And the scripture says that we are seated in the heavenly places in Yahusha. That's what Ephesians says. When Yahusha took his seat at the right hand of the Father, right? We were raised up together and we were made to sit together in the heavenly places in Messiah Yahusha. Colossians says, he has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of his love, right? So I wanted to talk about dominion and authority now, because next Tuesday, what time is it? Next Tuesday, we're going to delve in a little bit more now, because we're going to touch on the part. I'm going to explain my position when it comes to the two creations that I see. And you're going to see how it's tied up to what we're talking about today, dominion and authority. Why is it that we need to function we need to exercise, and we can only overcome darkness through the authority given by Yahuah to Yahusha? That is our authority here on earth, to be, to exercise, to claim, to partake the promise to the overcomer, to the Laodicean church, right? Where he says, to him who overcomes, I will grant to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. So I wanted to share that a little bit. And